Well, that didn't go according to plan at all. We'll call that a flubbed verbal. That gag was supposed to be for later in the show. Whoops. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Believe it or not, there is a reason for that gag. And clearly I have to edit that particular badge for something else. So, I see I've got Steve and Krista with me already, and a few... Oh, Steve, you'll appreciate the joke when we get to it. I just hate that I hit the button too early. So, Krista says she missed us while she was on vacation. That's all right. We were thrown off of YouTube for most of that time anyway, sunshine. Hey, I see Maul's watching too, and that probably means that the Smudge is right next to her. Good morning, Your Majesty. Morning, Maul. Looking forward to getting down to the lake house with you guys later today. All right, it is Firearms Friday, and I have not picked up any major ground-shattering legal cases. So this week, we did talk about, in our last episode of Firearms Friday, we were talking about the SCOTUS decision, and we went pretty deep into that. It was more of a Fourth Amendment decision, but it definitely had Second Amendment ramifications. But since we don't have a lot of that, hey, let's do some DGUs, some defensive gun use stories. That'll be the tenor of the morning. And you see the scorecards up there and ready to rock and roll. Let's start with security guard fatally shoots man outside Lorraine Club. Well, boom, there it is in the headline. I guess we get to go ahead and drop one. RT, baby. And I see the backup camera is still visible there, and it should not be. Let's just get rid of him. You don't get to be on camera if you don't show up in the morning. Damn it. So, Lorain, Ohio, 32-year-old man was killed by a security guard outside a Lorain nightclub in the early morning hours on Sunday. Marlo Sanford was shot by a security guard hired by the club Our Space, located in the 200 block of East 29th Street, according to a Lorain police officer. So this is Ohio. Lorain police officers who were providing extra patrols around the club heard gunshots. They said they arrived at a chaotic scene. Sanford had been shot directly in front of the club, and a large crowd had formed. Officers called for mutual aid to help secure the scene. Once the scene was secured, police say they learned that the shooting occurred after 3 security officers escorted a female out of the club. Once outside, Sanford brandished a firearm towards security. Oh dear. Okay. So that's... security are not necessarily cops, but here's the thing. It's just... Forget the legal, forget the moral, forget the ethical for a moment. It's a tactically bad choice to just wave a gun at armed men, generally. All right, let's assume that these 3 security guards, let's just for a moment take the security guard question out of the mix. Let's say you've got 3 cowboys who are wearing guns visibly on their hips, in much the same way that the security guards clearly were. Maybe those aren't the ones you want to point at. You got 3 guys together, all 3 of them are wearing guns visibly. This is a tactically bad choice. You may already have your weapon drawn, and it is correct to say that you can't get the drop on somebody, or that you can't outdraw somebody who's got the drop on you. But when you're talking about you 1 versus 3, and everybody's armed, the time that you spend taking out one of those 3, there is a high degree of probability that one of the other 2 is going to get you, as is evidenced here. And it looks like in this case, all 3 of the security guards made it out okay because one of them had the presence of mind to eliminate the threat. So, and Steve makes a good point. But like I said, the Steve points out not only is brandishing stupid, it's also a crime. Yes. Now, the brandishing rule gets a little muddy in self-defense claims. You know, somebody comes up to you with a knife and you draw your weapon and you don't kill them, but you draw the weapon, you don't actually use it beyond showing that you have it and saying, I will defend myself if you force me to. That is not brandishing. You know, by the definition of the word it is, but under the legal definition, it's a little different. Because in that case, what you are doing is effectively employing a firearm without discharging it, without having to actually kill the threat. And you're dissuading the problem. You're dissuading the attacker from continuing his attack. Yes, Steve, that's my point. It's very different than waving it around making threats. And the reason that distinction is so important, when you look at the CDC statistics on defensive firearms uses, they're muddy statistics. It's hard to get a statistical analysis around the very high number of defensive gun uses. And yes, the number of lawful defensive gun uses in the United States per annum is dramatically higher than the number of gun crimes per annum. What makes it so difficult to get your head around it, to get the stats around it, is in the case of a gun crime, there is an absolute activity. You know, somebody's robbed, somebody's murdered, somebody's shot, somebody's threatened, and by a much wider margin, there is a report. Even if the crime is never solved and the subject is never apprehended, there's a report that the incident occurred, and that, let me just make sure I'm not dinging here. There we go. And so there's actually a statistic to track in the case of crimes. Now, in the case of defensive gun uses, it is often the case, apparently, that a weapon is used where a mugging or something of the sort almost occurs or is in progress, and the would-be victim draws a weapon to scare off the mugger, and there's no police report. The bad guy runs away scared, and the good guy, the would-be victim, holsters his weapon and goes about his business. We know that these things happen, but the problem with that statement is you can only know that they happen from a preponderance of anecdote, not direct reports. So the statistics are hard to track on that. But even with those statistics being hard to track, the CDC estimates legitimate lawful defensive gun uses in the millions per year. So, yeah, when you're watching all those TV shows where every time just a regular citizen tries to use their firearm to defend themselves, it goes horribly wrong and the bad guy gets the gun and kills them, that happens incredibly rarely. The idea that's just repeated over and over again that you're more likely to be shot with your own weapon is absolutely false. It's a bald-faced lie. So, moving on. Yeah, there it is. Steve points out estimates are $500K to $3 million a year because so many are unreported. Yeah, and like even that $3 million, even that high-end estimate of $3 million is just a guess. But at the lowest possible end, the estimate is $500,000. Again, just a guess, but that $500,000 is, we know at least this many happened based on statistics, based on actual reports. We know of at least 500,000 cases per year and expect that there are, at a minimum, double, triple, or more than that go unreported. Okay, next. Victim shoots and injures burglar during attempted break-in. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Home invasion and robbery suspect is recovering from a gunshot wound after police said he forced his way into a couple's apartment with a gun. The incident happened Friday afternoon in an apartment complex near I-40 and Juan Tabo. According to court documents, James Kennedy threatened to shoot a man in the head outside his apartment, hit him in the head with the gun, then forced his way inside. The man's girlfriend was hiding inside the bedroom. Documents state Kennedy demanded the couple's belongings and then asked for their car keys. Kennedy then briefly left the apartment. When he returned, the man was armed. The victim told investigators he raised his pistol as the man ran at him in fear for his life. He fired multiple shots at the male. He stated he fired 7 shots and he began hitting the male with the pistol. He stated that the male was trying to get the gun out of his waistband as they fought for the gun. Kennedy was shot in the stomach but managed to make it to his mother's house. This is not Kennedy's first run-in with the law, according to Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office. He has 12 mugshots on file. Damn, son! He was also on parole for robbery and was wearing a GPS monitor, which investigators believe he tampered with. Okay. Well, Kennedy, I hate to do it to you, brother, but I'm going to have to give you a BRM. It's a good story, but a mere wounding is insufficient. The threat persisted. I just get this image of this guy charging. Blam, blam, blam. Apparently fired 7 shots while charging the enemy. Only managed to land 1. But after shooting himself dry, he just beat the guy in the face with his gun. I mean, oh, that. Oh. Yeah. I know. How do you supposed to keep your eyes open while pulling the trigger? Uncle Steve, I just do. If you have trouble keeping your eyes open while pulling the trigger, well, practice more. No, I mean, yes, you're going to blink, but you blink anyway. Your mind barely even registers the lack of data being inputted through your receptacles when you shut them off for the microsecond of a blink, so it shouldn't be a problem. Plus, shot grouping. Come on now. Come on. Okay, so, moving on. And, this was another security guard. Security guard fatally shoots alleged armed man at SWOKC cannabis store. Oh dear. Oh dear, here we go. Oh, there's a video. Developing top story. Oh, come on. Show me some security footage. No security footage? Okay. You suck. Anyway, a man was killed while trying to force his way inside a Metro cannabis store. Yay, DRT. There's another one. It happened Sunday morning near Interstate 40 and South Meridian. This is Oklahoma City. The business owner told News 9 he did not believe the suspect wanted money or drugs. According to business employees, Joe Bixler insisted he was there to kill anyone who had not received the COVID-19 vaccine. Oh dear. Oh dear. So, Trisha says she can't hear. I hope that's your problem and not mine. Sorry to say. But I appear to be getting good audio through here, so check your headphones. I'm sorry, Trisha. So there you go. Let's see. According to business employees, Joe Bixler insisted he was there to kill anyone who would not receive the COVID-19 vaccine. Wow, you know what's funny? I actually designed this particular badge for a completely different story. But there you go. Just keep voting Democrat, guys. That's gonna do you a world of good with these nut jobs. Holy crap. Wow. I don't want to go too far down the road on talking about medical misinformation because, frankly, we can't afford another strike right now. But come on. It's not complicated. I have often said that Democrat politicians are evil. They're actively interested in the destruction of this country, and that people who vote for them are misled, probably ill-informed, well-meaning fools. I do not maintain a relationship with a lot of people who still vote Democrat. They're poison. They are a cancer that is contagious. So, let's move on from that one, because, man in critical condition after woman he tried to attack shot him, police said. Okay. Dear feminists, if you're not fully on board for the Second Amendment as a feminist, you're not a feminist. Because let me make something very, very clear to you. God created man, and Sam Colt made them equal. Man in critical condition after woman he tried to attack shot him. Police. A man in the hospital in critical condition after a woman he tried to attack shot him. The incident, okay. Is that just the headline? Headline and first sentence. Okay, fair enough. Copy editor, come on now. You can do better. The incident took place at approximately 2:22 p.m. Miami-Dade Police Department responded to the 163th Street Mall near North Miami Beach after reports of a shooting. When police arrived, they discovered an adult male with gunshot wounds. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue transported him to an area hospital in critical condition. And apparently, Miami had a rough weekend. I might talk about that a little bit more in a minute because I've almost gotten through the stories for this morning. Okay, so this one's another BRM, no fatality. Okay, and I see that Trish got her sound fixed. Everybody else says that they were 5x5. They can hear me clearly. I got a licking chicken from Ma and Sergeant Major's right there, so that's good. That's good ops on audio. SWAT! When police arrived, they discovered an adult male with gunshot wounds. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue transported him to an area hospital in critical condition. And there's not much else to the story. Preliminary investigation revealed that an adult female was in her vehicle when the male approached her and began to bang on her window and attack her. As a result, she shot him. I'm pretty good with that. Okay, you're fired. I'm not buying your thing. Aha. Okay, this is the last story I want to carry. Crook shot in face with his own gun by wounded victim in Bronx subway robbery gone wrong. Okay. So, like I was saying earlier, there's this narrative that you're more likely to be shot with your own gun than to defend yourself successfully with it. You'll hear him say that crap on television all the time, especially in Hollywood-produced leftist dramas and dramedies and all that crap. So Dad says, "Can you believe my son told a joke in Korean and I understood it?" So check it out. 득무상사님은 지금은 다른 웹사이트 네이버.com으로 저 보았어. 또한 한국 판도에서 네이버.com은 유튜브도 같아요. 그 이외에는 다른 다음 주에다가 시작하면 그 네이버.com으로 라이브 스트리머 시작하겠습니다. So take that and put in your pipe. Because I mean, we've got U.S. forces over there, and 다른 한국 사람들이 나는 아주 사랑해. So should get a chuckle out of those people, and well, Koreans need to learn about freedom. So, crook shot in face with his own gun by wounded victim in Bronx subway robbery gone wrong. I want to design a different badge for a situation like this where the bad guy just gets obliterated by an unarmed man. But this happened in New York, so let me tell you this. Let me read the story to you. A robber shot an unsuspecting victim inside a Bronx subway station, but the stick-up backfired when the victim fought back, grabbing his assailant's weapon and shooting him in the face. In the face! Yes! I'm all about the center mass, but when you're that close, just go ahead and do the job. We're going to call that a DRT. Oh. I accidentally hit both buttons at the same time. There are no DOTs today, so I'll draw that one back. But I'm going to call that a DRT. Oh, because, damn, son. The 21-year-old would-be robber pulled his gun on a 40-year-old man in the mezzanine of the BD station at East 182nd Street and the Grand Concourse in Fordham Heights, said authorities. Jeremy Lynch, a neighborhood resident, was inside the station near the token booth when the struggle occurred on the other side of the turnstiles. I heard arguing. I took cover, he said. As the men fought, the 21-year-old suspect was shot in the face while the 40-year-old man was shot in the torso, said sources. Okay, here's the problem. This is New York. That's right. Jeremy Lynch heard arguing, and he took cover. He didn't attempt to render aid. He took cover. Why is that? Because it's nearly impossible to legally carry a firearm in New York City. It is a may-issue state. What that means is, in order to get a firearm in New York City and carry it lawfully, first, you have to ask permission to purchase a firearm. You have to be licensed to own a firearm. And then once you've been granted permission by the Crown to keep and bear arms, then you have to register your firearm with the government. I'm not sure if it's with the state government or with the city government. I suspect both. But I'm not sure about that. But you do have to register the weapon after you purchase it. Those licenses are handled by the courts and the sheriffs concurrently. Basically, if you live in New York City, the only people that are allowed to have guns are criminals. Tim Pool was recently talking about trying to get a firearms license. Now, he was talking about it in New Jersey, but the New Jersey is more strict than New York in all fairness, but they're very similar. You have to fill out an application, and to get an application filled out for a concealed carry license, you have to give them a reason. You have to justify your need to defend yourself. So let me be very careful. Let me be very, very clear about this. We have a constitution in this country. It is not only the case that the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed, but you have the God-given basic right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So, life is the first priority in that chain. because if you are not alive, you cannot be free or happy. But the New York actively denies your right to live, your basic freedom to defend yourself. So, yeah. Not that one. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just all over the place with these damn buttons this morning. That one. Keep it up, New York. That's working out great for you, isn't it? Not like you had a record, not like you had the highest numbers, some of the highest numbers in the world on COVID deaths. It's not like your politicians actively murdered your senior citizens, right? And it's not like crime is on the absolute rampant rise in New York as a result of your lawless politicians, your anti-liberal or your anti-liberty, anti-liberal, anti-constitutional laws. Understand something, guys. You cannot refer to what is a Democrat as a liberal. It's not an intelligent statement. An American conservative is conservative, in theory, of the Constitution of the United States of America. Okay? The Constitution restricts the authority of government for the purpose of making men as free as possible, while simultaneously facilitating cooperation to the mutual benefit of those citizens. It is unequivocally that document which we are conservative of as constitutional conservatives, the most liberal legal document constructing a government that has, does, or is likely to exist on the face of this earth. As I've said many, many times on this show before, America is not the last desperate grasp at liberty as it's swept away from us across the world. It is the first beachhead of liberty. We have landed on the beaches of the tyrannical world in the United States of America. We have made that first footfall, established that beachhead, established that foothold, and it is here that we must win, because if liberty dies in the United States, then the freedom of men dies all across the world. And the Second Amendment, which we celebrate on this show, especially on the Firearms Friday show, celebrating defensive gun use and the and legal victories against the encroaching tyranny of the leftists, the illiberal, anti-American, anti-constitutional leftists. We celebrate those victories because the Second Amendment, paramountly, the Second Amendment should have been the first. Because without the second, the first goes away. And that could not be more plainly evident today. Across this country, we are saddled, we are burdened with infringements to the right to keep and bear arms. And the more and more these shitburger tyrannical leftists manage to saddle us with illegitimate, unconstitutional laws like registrations, background checks, red flag laws. Yes, I said background checks. That is an infringement. And as long as the enemy continues to burden your right to keep and bear arms, then you continue to see active censorship on social media. You continue to see shadow edits in mainstream press outlets where they're going back and changing the language so that instead of calling Tom Cotton a deranged conspiracy theorist pushing debunked lab leak conspiracies, they went back and stealth edited the headlines so that now it says he supported the fringe theory, which is contradicted rather than debunked by some scientists. Right? It went from he's a radical nut job that believes things that have been proven false by an absolute consensus of all scientists to, now we've got Fauci's emails out, and so suddenly Tom Cotton is supporting a fringe theory that's disputed by some scientists. Okay. When I first read 1984 in, like the late 80s, early 90s, I mean, I was a kid. I remember thinking, I was young enough that the internet wasn't really a thing yet. If you read newspapers, it was long enough ago that the vast majority of people did not get their news from the internet. They got it from television programs, and they got it from even more from newspapers and magazines. And I remember thinking back then, reading 1984, because Winston Smith's job was to edit history. His job was to edit news headlines, right? And I remember thinking back then that, okay, this is science fiction, because there's just no way that a person could go around and get all the newspapers. And, basically with the technology of the time, you would have to just print a whole new run of newspapers with the edits made and go out and somehow replace all the original newspapers that you were trying to change. Well, that's not the case anymore. Now that the news is online, the work of Winston Smith is very, very possible. And it happens constantly. Y'all should get smart on archive.is. Right? Get smart on the Internet Archives. That we have the Wayback Machine. You can go back and look at you go in and people will take snapshots of the newspaper. I use it a lot. Take snapshots of the newspaper when the headlines run, and then you can see the Oh yeah, Steve, that's my point. It not only is it now possible, it wasn't possible when I first read 1984 30 years ago. It's very possible now. But you can go into the archive. You can go into archive.is and you can look at the old headlines and see, guys, they're going back and stealth editing headlines that are over a year old, and the likelihood is that nobody's looking for those headlines today unless they're doing research, right? Unless they're doing research to do more reporting. So when they're doing the stealth edits, they're not changing what the people know about the narrative. They're changing what's being fed into the research that's done to make statements about the narrative. Which means that they're not just constantly pushing their own narrative into their own propaganda garbage. It means that they're trying to change the material, the historical documents and records, which somebody like me might use to do the research on another topic. So if I go back and I can't, and if I were to suddenly say, remember last year when Tom Cotton said we need to look at this Wuhan lab leak situation? There might be something there, right? If I was to say that on my show and then go back into the archive, or without the archive, not having the archive available, assuming that eventuality. If I was to go back and just look for the websites, the New York Times, CNN, those guys that are doing the stealth editing stuff, if I was just go back and look at their pages to get the original article so that I had something to reference when I was accusing various websites of saying that this was the case when it was not, if I go back and find that, then the information no longer exists. This is essentially the extra-legal process of spoliation. They're going back and trying to destroy evidence. Right now, in fairness, what they're doing with the stealth edits is not technically a crime. It would only actually be the crime of spoliation if they were doing it after having been subpoenaed for evidence under oath or in the course of discovery in court by law. But the functional effect is the same. And so in any case where you see that, I'm sorry, I've wandered way off topic and now I'm over time, but let me wrap this up. In any case where you see that a mainstream media outlet has made press edits, has made stealth edits to articles and headlines that they've published in the past. Now, so there are retractions, there are corrections, right? In a retraction, they publish an article that says, hey, we got this one wrong, here's what we got wrong, we're sorry. Retractions I've had a lot of qualms with, because what they'll do is they'll run the most damning and alarming stuff, like the Very Fine People hoax will be the front page of every newspaper. And then if there's a correction, it'll be buried at the back of the page. They'll basically hide the correction. They'll print it so they can say they did, but they'll print it. They'll carefully go out of their way to print it in such a location that nobody ever sees it. That way, they get to pretend like they did the right thing, while the damage, it's not just that the damage has been done, but the damage continues to be done. Then you've got your corrections, where they go in and say, okay, we were right mostly, but we got this detail wrong. And with a correction, what they usually do is especially now that we're all online, is they go in and they edit the article, they change the information that they got wrong, and they attach an editor's note to the top or bottom of the article that says this article was edited for these reasons. The stealth edit is where they go in and they change the pertinent data, they change the pertinent information, they make the edits, and there's no comment. Because the objective with the stealth edit is to gaslight you into believing that they didn't get it wrong to begin with. It's a lie. The stealth edit is a lie. And it should be treated exactly like spoliation. In a courtroom, given spoliation is when the court has subpoenaed you for evidence, and then you go and destroy that evidence. For example, if they were to say you need to turn over all of your private email servers, and then you went and smashed a bunch of phones with hammers and ran complex bleaching software through your machines and before you tore them out of the janitor's closet and set them all on fire, that's called spoliation. When you get caught spoliating, destroying evidence after it's been subpoenaed by the court, the judge's instruction to the jury will be, you should consider the evidence that was destroyed to be maximally damning. If you've got a murder suspect, for example, and after the trial begins, he's caught destroying a gun, then the assumption has to be that because he knows that the act of destroying that gun at this point is itself a crime, then the only logical and reasonable assumption to make is that that gun was in fact the murder weapon and linked him to the murder sufficiently to guarantee conviction, at least to a not insubstantial degree. You treat the weapon as if you had seen the evidence and it was as damning as it could possibly be. So when you see these outlets making the stealth edits, I implore you, assume the worst. They're not destroying evidence for no reason. They're destroying evidence because they committed a bad act, not necessarily a crime. All right, when we're talking about the stealth edits, not necessarily a crime. Because apparently, election fortification, not a crime. We can infer that it's not a crime because there have been no real consequences. Guys, I am going to end up spinning off on so many other directions, and I've got a bunch of kids that I got to go take and throw in a lake in a little while. So y'all be safe out there. I love you. It is Friday. Don't drink bacon in the shower, and for God's sake, avoid mixing your farm animals, drugs, sex, and alcohol, and don't do any of it on videotape. Take care, and we'll see you Monday.